welcome to Balancing Act. We are here with Michon Henegar, Linda Wilson, and myself, Sam McEwen. Welcome. We're going to talk to Michon about a youth initiative that is coming up, and a lot of you in the empowered living community are very aware of this. You've been on the call. So, Michon, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Sam. Well, it is a pleasure to be here, and I'll just briefly share about myself. I've been in education now for 3 decades. I love what I do, and I have taught every single grade except 4th and 5th grade. Those are the only 2 grades I never taught. I also was part of the original pre-K initiative in Arizona when they first rolled out preschool. And then I have kind of like moved up just like the kids. I kept moving up and started teaching high school. And then later on in my career, I was a principal elementary, middle school, and high school, and then taught at the university level. Now I've come back, and what we're doing right now is I'm working specifically on a youth initiative that we can look at every age and stage. So whether it's a child birth, all the way to maybe someone going to college or even starting their career. And we want to give them the tools to help them be successful. So that's what I'm doing right now. Our company name is called My Brain Coach, because we know that everything starts right here, right? Yep. The way we think, and that's what leads all of our actions. And so the youth initiative is called Journey of Action. And we're excited to roll this out and really help youth internationally.
I'm so excited about this, and what a wonderful way for us to be able to help our youth and to show them ways that they can grow and be better citizens, and also to give back, especially the older kids.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're moving on. They can help out in the initiative as well. So that is great.
I like, Linda, what you said, them giving back, because that's one of the key components of it. I think so often I use this little phrase, we become consumers of knowledge, right? We, instead of becoming producers. And so I say to even teachers or parents, we want children to become producers, not simply consumers, just taking all the information, but using that information.
Yeah. So was there a main event or what's the word I'm looking for? The light bulb came on that you was the main impetus for putting this program together?
Sam, that's a good question. I travel and train across the nation, and so I'm seeing a lot of different things. And so I see a lot of teachers and administrators that are very stressed. I can see parents that are stressed even at the grocery store, right, when you go through, and people don't really know what to do and how to help their children. And so as I've looked at that, and as I have observed, just social behaviors and how people are feeling, and all of just the stress and the things that we're carrying, right, as a society in general, I said, what can we do to help along the way? And I mean, there's no better place than to start with a community like Empowered Living. Mm-hmm. We have so many coaches and people that are helping every day, whether it might be brain coaching or leadership coaching or on sales, that we can say, what can we do for this younger generation? So that's what really spurred it for me, to say like, okay, we need to be able to jump in and really make a difference. And I think too, Sam, one thing that is very interesting is that social and emotional learning has been something that's been broadcast across our nation. I'm sure both of you have heard of it. And yet there has to be something that's even more than that. So I think when we get into like emotional intelligence, understanding the brain, getting into the leadership pieces, when I put all of that together, I now have like a beautiful program. But it's more than a program. It's all the things that children are going to need and our youth will need in order to be successful and to feel successful going out into the workforce.
Yeah. There's so much that can't be done in a school day. Mm-hmm. And then unfortunately, and I have a grandson that this is, mm-hmm. his main source of entertainment. Mm-hmm. And I'm worried about, some, especially the younger ones. I've worked recently with older young people, high school age and stuff like that. And some of the things that some of the skills that they don't have, the social skills and the planning skills and what do you want to do, goal setting and things like that.
Right. And I agree with you on that. I think technology there are a lot of benefits with it,
Mm-hmm.
but there can also be a lot of drawbacks. I was reading an article this morning that was saying that a teenager on average is on their phone 7 hours a day.
Wow.
And that's a lot of time, right? But
Yep.
if I were to ask a parent that might have a baby, like how many hours do they watch Miss Rachel? That's like a really popular show right now for babies. Or, how long are they watching Paw Patrol? And even these little ones between like the ages of 0 and 5 are consuming a lot of different shows. I mean, even a baby, they know when they see that phone, right? They're like, they want the phone and they even know how to scroll. And so I think, really being able to say what is appropriate, not that we will never have screens and we will always have screens.
Yeah.
It's not going away, but we have to know how to use things in the best way for our children and our youth. And I often say to parents with little ones, I was sitting by a mom, matter of fact, just on my trip back from Ohio this week. I was at the National Head Start Conference, and of course, there's this little baby on the road, and she's like, "Oh, this is my baby's first flight." And I said, "The baby's going to be great." She's like, "What do you do?" And I shared with her, and she said, "Well, what can I do to help my baby?" And I said, "Well, we all want our babies to be as bright as possible, right?" And so I gave her my bright model. But, the first thing is bonding. And the second one is reading. I said, read to your baby. And I said, make sure that you avoid those screens. And she's like, okay, because it's so tempting. Like I just need like a little break. So I'll have my baby watch a show. But then what happens is it's addictive, right? So they don't ever want to give it up.
Right.
It's kind of like a pacifier. They have a hard time taking it away.
Yeah. I've noticed that with my grandson is 4. And so there's a lot of screen time or there was quite a bit until he actually went to a preschool here. Mm-hmm. And there's no screens there's TV screen, but it's never on in the classroom. And so he's forced to, number one, interact with other children and, play with puzzles and games and things like that. And that was one thing when the kids went and looked for daycare that they did look for.
Mm-hmm.
And there's,
I was going to say that's so important that they look for that. And there's state regulations now that often will say, hey, no more than 30 minutes of screen time per day in a child care center.
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah.
So I think some of those things, Sam, like what we're saying, as educators and even, other people that are kind of doing the research is, hey, let's make sure these kids don't have these screens. But now because they become so dependent on them, it's affecting them long term. That's why I meet families and their kids are like 25 and 27 and they're still trying to figure it out. And I'm like, well, what do they do at home? Like they just want to do gaming all the time. That's what they want to do.
Right.
And they just don't have that initiative to go forward. But like your 4-year-old grandson, when he is in, childcare and he's doing like puzzles and building with blocks, he's having to be creative. Number one, he's also having to learn how to solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
All of those are the skills that we take into life.
Yep.
And really, that's what the journey of action is about. And that's what the youth initiative is about. It's saying, here are some different ideas of things that you can do to really help this next generation be successful. And it's not just little ones. I mean, elementary age kids, middle school, high school. And we can never forget that just because a lot of these kids are starting to move that tassel, right, and they're graduating, that they're ready for life because the brain is still not formed completely. And so really, if you think about it from 18 to 25, that's a big gap, 7 years. Mm-hmm. They still need like us to really be pouring into them and helping them along the way.
And I think also that it's what I'm noticing, especially after COVID, it changed how we interact as people. And the kids don't have that interpersonal skills. So when they're hitting high school and maybe they're looking for a job or mom or dad thinks they should need a job, depending on you're not doing anything. Go earn some money. They don't know how to interact with other people. Because even, if you notice, there could be a room full of kids, 12, 13, 14, and they're interacting with each other through their phone.
Mhm.
They're not talking to each other. They're not engaging in a human way. They're engaging electronically.
I think you're right. And Linda, what I love about what you brought up, and I'll just kind of loop it back to what Sam was saying earlier. He asked me, why did I write the youth initiative? I would encourage people that are watching today, like, start watching others, like, for social norms, like social skills and things that are going on in your environment. I often will go to dinner and I will just watch, like, how many families come in, they have children or youth, and they're on their phones. And just as you're watching, count how many, because I think the first step is that we have to be aware. Sometimes we're not even aware. We walk into a restaurant, we eat dinner, we are talking to the person we're with, we walk out the door. But be aware, like, look around your environment and say, okay, what's happening even in this restaurant? What could I do to make a difference? Because I think once your awareness is raised, and Paul often talks about that. Once we're aware of something,
Mhm.
then we can take it to that next step.
Right. Right.
That's important.
And I would think, even, what are we modeling? Look at what we're doing.
Yeah.
Because even now, like, if Lydia and I go to dinner or we're just sitting around, we're still spending a lot of time on this, but we're talking to each other at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But, even when Jeff and I would go out while we were waiting for the meal, something, we'd be talking about sports or something, and one of us would be looking something up and the other one would be talking about it. But we also agreed, when the food comes, the phone gets put aside.
Right.
And one of the things I'm starting to do more when I'm doing things is making sure the phone's on do not disturb. So I'm not getting pinged
Right.
and being distracted from what I'm doing. Because
It's important.
if I don't pick it up, if I hear it vibrate or I hear it ping,
Mm-hmm.
it's poking in there and it's distracting.
Yeah.
Well, and the research is showing that when we actually get a message, it takes the brain 15 minutes to get back into the same space of where you were before.
Wow.
So think about kids, like, if they're constantly having messages, they're trying to do their homework, but they're checking a message or seeing something that popped up. Or, I mean, how many times have we as adults, we can say kids, but we pick up our phone in the morning and the first thing we do, we find we're on Facebook already or Instagram and we're already scrolling.
Right.
It's easy. So I think you're right, Linda, that we have to be the models and know what we're doing. One thing, when my kids were younger, I would tell them, like, when we check out our groceries, we always are talking to the person that's checking out our groceries. And so we're not taking phone calls or, talking to someone else or texting. That's not what we do. We want to make sure that we are giving them our attention, just like if you were the person checking out the groceries, you would want someone talking to you. And so we always kind of drum up that conversation with people, right? So that we can actually have those social skills being built. And my children remember that. They're now 27 and 30, and they remember those moments of us actually being intentional in what we did. But I had to model it. And so there might be someone who called me and I'd be like, hey, I have to go now. I'm actually at the cash register and I need to talk to the person that's here. So it's valuing people.
Right.
It is. And no matter what we are teaching our kids, they learn more from what we model than what we say.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, that's
I
absolutely
think
right.
that's a huge part of what this initiative can do, is allow us to model.
Yeah.
For them.
It's true. And the youth initiative, I want to kind of like just speak to that quickly, that it's not something that you need to overcomplicate. It literally could be that you read the lesson and you have some ideas in your head of questions that you're going to ask. And then you go, it could be like a local McDonald's and you have like a little meetup, maybe with like your son and a couple of his friends. It could be that. And you're talking and you're asking these questions like, what do you want to do when you grow up? What is your vision? What is your dream? And you start these rich conversations, and you can even tell stories.
Mhm.
I often say, like, when I was a little girl, I always wanted to be a teacher. That was just my fun thing. Matter of fact, you both might remember this. Do you remember Highlight magazines? Anyone?
Oh
Oh
gosh,
yeah.
yes, I grew up with highlights.
Yes,
They were at the
absolutely.
dentist, they were at the doctors, they came to the house.
Right? I'm like, so fun. And I would keep those Highlight magazines and I would pass them out on the floor and I would pretend those were my students and I would teach to them.
Mm.
And
Oh,
so
that's
what we're
awesome.
wanting to do is spur those ideas in children's heads or youth. Like, and here's another little tip and trick, which I'll teach on it over the next 2 Saturdays, but I'll drop it here as well. Is so often when a teenager tells me, "Oh, I want to be a dentist when I grow up," I'm like, "That's great. I love that, and I believe that for you. What else would you like to do?" Now, the reason I do that, and I used to do it as a high school principal, is sometimes they're just hearing different things. Like maybe their parents want them to be a dentist, right? Or it's something that's in the family. And I want their brain to start thinking like there might be multiple things that I want to do, right? And we don't have to just think of one career or one thing that we're going to focus on. Also, it gives teenagers a good backup plan. So when I was going to, like, let's say I was going to go and be a dentist, that's what I thought I was going to do. And then all of a sudden, like my math scores, maybe they weren't high enough to get into the program. I don't feel like my whole world fell apart because I've known all along there's a couple of things that I'm really interested in doing.
Right.
I think that's another little tip and trick when you're working with teenagers. Like, okay, that's one. What would be another one? And even getting up to three. What are three things that you're really interested in?
And
Yeah,
I would go
that's
ahead.
really interesting and way to have the conversation, especially with teenagers. There's I'm thinking of one kid. This guy is very, very intelligent. He is also a all-state athlete. I don't want to give too much away, but um, we had a conversation, and the expectation was on to Division One, full ride scholarship, all this kind of stuff. And you could tell by looking at him that was not his expectation.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were having a conversation. I said, "What do you really want to do?" He would he would come after class to talk. All right, and so and he told me he had this business plan. He had the business plan. He had the idea. He had everything written out. And I said, "So what's your backup? What's your?" And he had a whole structure of things. His backup was actually going back to sports to get the full ride scholarship if the rest of the plan didn't work out. And so, but to get the kids thinking, like very few think like that, you know,
Right.
and so to ask the right questions, to try and get two or three. I mean, we do that when we're coaching adults, you
Mm-hmm.
know. What is it? Seven whys to get to the right answer, right? And but I'm interested in a comment you made about 15 minutes from to get back to, if you're on the screen, to get back to what you were doing, to get your mind back focused. Is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly what I said. So, and that's to get the brain like back into a place. So, for example, like today, I'm doing a lot of writing, and it's very quiet in my office.
Okay.
If my phone goes off and my brain goes to that place and space, my brain will not get back into that solid focus of writing and that flow again for 15 more minutes.
Wow.
So again, when we're talking about children and we're talking about our youth, helping them understand that and understand strategies. And I think often we don't share like the statistics with our kids. And I think it's important for them to know because they need to know why we're telling them not to be on technology. Like why? Why is it important to not be on technology? And so I think sharing things with our kids, with our grandkids, with the youth that we're working with, like giving them the why and having them come up with some of them. Like, well, why do you think you shouldn't be on technology? It's a great question.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just leaving it open ended and being okay with the pause when they're like, well, I don't know. And I just say to them, oh, I know you know. So just think about it a minute more. I'll come back to you because it's such a great question. And I'm so interested and so intrigued. What we're trying to do is really get conversation going with our youth. And so again, that youth initiative, really what it's saying is, what can you do to really help someone that's younger? And you might be the voice and just the right person that's going to make a difference in their life that will be long term.
Yeah.
I think people don't realize that. They don't realize that you might just be that person.
And I have found when adults take interest in, especially high school and junior high school kids, adults other than their parents, take an interest in them and ask questions, that they get a little more excited about life.
Mhm.
They get a little more excited about what's going on.
Especially when they find an adult that's willing to actually listen to them, to that answer, and not do, that's great, but just allowing them to put that answer out where other people can hear it and they can hear themselves speaking it. Because usually you don't get that at home. Not that parents aren't doing what they should, but it's a different environment.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is someone they may know or they may not know, who is saying, tell me about your dream, and then just sitting back and listening to them.
Right. No, I think you're right. It's taking that time to pause and let them process it out. And then when you look at Journey of Action, and you were talking earlier, Sam, about the teenagers. So, we often, if you even watch like a kindergarten graduation, they'll ask them, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Fireman, right? They give like these different answers: teacher, doctor. And you might have done it when you graduated from kindergarten, right? Like, and we all kind of have followed that little, think of what you want to be when you grow up. But then we kind of like drop off from there, and we continue that conversation. When we get to high school and even middle school, and you're working with the Journey of Action Youth Initiative, the program, or the lesson, is called Teams Fulfill Dreams. And let me just kind of give you a little insight on that. So if someone says to me, I think I want to be a nurse, I say, okay, like, what are some of the different things that you could do today to start helping you reach that dream?
Mm-hmm.
That's where we coach our youth to really help them. So as a high school principal, I worked with a group of students, and a lot of them wanted to go into the healthcare profession. Well, our school was right next door to a big hospital. So I thought, I'm going to walk over there and I'm going to just see if they have a youth program. And they did. They had a junior volunteer program. And so we had our kids that were in our school actually go over and work in the hospital setting. Now, some of them went and they came back and they're like, I think I'm not really interested in that anymore, right? Like, that was not for me. But I was looking the other day, one of the teachers, it was Teacher Appreciation Week, the first week of May, and she had posted, if you were one of my former students, tell me what you're doing today. Now, she was a teacher that had worked under me when I was a principal. And I saw all these kids' names pop up that I'm like, oh my goodness, we got you all into the junior volunteer program at the hospital. One of them is now an ophthalmologist. Another one is a dentist. Another one is a pharmacist. We have several nurses out there. And so when I started looking at it, I'm like, it made a difference, because we started teaching them strategy to get where they needed to be. We worked with the counselors, and when they would take classes, like at the community college, we were very specific to tell those counselors, like, when they enroll in their classes, remember, we're working towards like the healthcare field. If we knew what college they were planning on going to, like a university, we would contact the university and say to the university, will this count towards this degree plan? That's where we can coach and mentor. We help them along.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So I just kind of wanted to drop that little piece there, that when you're in the lesson of Teams Fulfill Dreams, it's really that we're not only hearing what they want to do, now we're starting to get them think of strategies to actually make it happen.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Michon, I think we have a lot more we can talk about. Are you willing to come back and do another session with us?
Absolutely. Always happy to come back.
Okay, awesome. Well, Linda, this is kind of a wrap for today. We're a little bit over, but we're here with Michon Henegar and talking about her program, Journey of Action. Many of you in the Empowered Living community have already been through some of the training, and we appreciate you listening today. This has been Sam McEwen, Linda Wilson. Y'all live intentionally, be very, very blessed.
We'll see you in the next one.